Hi, so thanks for chatting to me today about your new product.
You're very welcome.
So we're at BAA, and what have you got showcased for us today?
So the company that we represent, or I represent, is Oticon Medical,
Yep.
and we are in the business of sending sound to people's or through people's ears in a different way, using
Okay.
bone conduction.
Okay.
And this is a bone-anchored hearing device
Okay.
that will essentially send sound through an implant or a stud, if you
Yes.
like, and it sends that sound directly through the bone to the cochlea,
To the inner ear?
to the inner ear.
Okay.
So we're bypassing the outer part. So if patients have, let's say, chronic ear infections
Sure.
and other issues that might prevent them from having a traditional hearing aid,
Okay.
bone-anchored hearing solutions are an alternative.
Okay, so this little thing will pick up sound, and what happens next?
So these two little, you might not see those, but they're two dots, which are the microphones.
Okay.
So within this device, there's something called a transducer.
Okay.
A transducer is a device that converts one form of energy to another. In this case, we're taking sound signals
Yep.
and we're sending them into mechanical vibration signals. So this device essentially just vibrates the skull.
Oh, okay.
And connected to this is, as I say, a stud or an abutment. So that is in the patient's mastoid bone.
Yes.
And then you attach this to the outside of the stud, and it vibrates through that titanium stud, sending the sound.
Okay, so in other words, if someone has loads of ear infections, they might not have an eardrum, and so they might be a little bit deaf or quite deaf, and they're pretty much cut off, right?
Sure, yeah.
And sometimes wearing hearing aids can make the infections get worse,
Yeah.
or they might not even have.
They could be a patient that was born, without a pinna, microtia, atresia patient. So, they may have normal in terms of the anatomy
Yeah.
and function, but
Yeah.
no way of sending air through because they don't have an ear canal. So this is another way, and that's another sort of group of patients that might fit that criteria. Typically, it's always been for mild to moderate losses.
Okay.
But now with the superpower device, this is something that can now move us up a band, if you like, to patients with a slightly more sort of moderate to severe hearing loss.
So does that mean that someone might have perhaps some changes to their hearing over time, and that means that sound can't get in, but if they could get sound, it needs to be louder because they have some underlying hearing loss as well. Okay.
Higher output, basically. So having more oomph and more power to send all of the signals and to capture as much of that natural sound as possible in a clear and easy sort of to assimilate way, and that's what the device will do.
How is this different from the vibrations that are sent through glasses arms?
Yeah, good question. So the key thing there is that falls into a category separate to direct bone conduction. So this is direct bone. We are on bone directly through the stud, sending sound.
Yeah.
When you have something across the skin,
Yes.
you then have that dampening effect. So you can send the sounds through this vibrating device, this transducer, but it's having to work to move through the skin. So you actually lose quite a large pocket of power
And
up to
energy.
So it's basically skin attenuates the sound and the power, and then the actual power that gets through to the bone is less than what it would be if it was directly on the bone. And probably more key than that is the fact that through a skin-driven system,
Yes.
you're losing out access to the areas of sound which are sort of more relevant to our speech understanding. So high frequencies.
Okay.
So-
Don't travel well through skin.
No.
And so the sound, therefore, will be more blurry and less clear. But with
Exactly.
a device like this, we have a better frequency response.
Yeah.
Okay. And the processor, is it analog or digital?
It's digital.
Okay,
Yeah.
what does that mean?
So basically this device is kind of thinking for itself.
Okay.
It's working on its own terms based on the chip, the brains inside the device. So what this device is doing is constantly assessing the area and the environment that the patient's in,
Yep.
and adapting itself to suit that environment. So if, for instance, you and I are talking here,
Yes.
the device would dampen down some of the external noises and the lower frequencies from an environmental input standpoint,
Okay.
but keep me more directionally focused in the higher frequencies where speech understanding comes from. So that's part of the directionality built into the system, and that's thanks to having a very good digital platform.
So in other words, sound comes in, the device thinks about the sound, classifies it as noise or speech,
Yeah.
cleans it up to a degree, and then delivers it to the inner ear.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So How would this device work for someone who has single-sided deafness?
Okay, so they're another patient group that are suitable for this device. Single-sided deafness, in the traditional sense, is that typically one side is a completely either dead ear, as we would class it, and we would fit this device to the dead ear side.
Okay.
And the reason why we would do that is to maybe give some sound clues. So let's say you're a taxi driver and you're completely deaf in this one ear here,
Yeah.
but you actually want to pick up some sound from your passengers.
Sure.
It's not going to give you the true definition of like, oh, the sound is there or it's there, but it gives you some idea of sound clues and possibly some sound lateralization.
Okay.
So the key thing about having a bone anchored device, particularly for single-sided deafness, is having power. Because having power means we've got more output, and sending sound here means that sound has to travel all the way around the skull, and there is a transcranial attenuation. So a bit like the skin takes some of the sound, sending it all the way also will lose some of its output. So having the most powerful device to do that overcomes that as best as possible.
So I guess also single-sided deafness can affect things like enjoying a family meal together at a table,
Yeah.
and being aware of sounds from the side that's affected. So in essence, this is almost like a remote microphone picking up the sounds from the affected side and delivering them to the good ear.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And you can also go a step further with some of the wireless technologies we've got. So for instance, if that patient, as you've described, was in a dinner setting, they could, for instance, give their partner a microphone clip.
Sure.
And if they have the streaming device that talks to this, then the microphone that the other person's wearing sends the sounds directly through the streamer to the processor, so they would pick up that, which could be particularly useful if a person is out with their significant other for dinner, if they're lucky enough to get such a joy, and that would help in that setting as well. So there's a whole host of other options for that.
How does that work? What signals are used there?
Well, it's a Bluetooth signal,
Okay.
and it will work up to sort of 20 meters distance away for that device particularly. But it just gives more connectivity options.
So if it's using Bluetooth, does that mean a person who, for example, needs to use their mobile, if they didn't have an eardrum, they couldn't use the phone on the ear, that they could stream the phone call through the streamer using the Bluetooth?
That. Yeah,
Okay.
hands-free as well.
Hands-free.
Yeah, so the if a phone was connected to the streamer and the streamer's already connected to the processor, then that sound and the person calling you and speaking to you would come directly to that processor. And then so long as you're just wearing your streamer, which also has a microphone, that means they can then pick you up and you can have a conversation. So really, really good. So of course, for things like listening effort and fatigue, whether it be just generally using a device or whether it be talking to somebody on a phone, it's another huge value add.
So is there options in the programming of the device to, if, for example, one is taking a call, that the microphone of the device quietens down so that background noise doesn't interfere so much with the phone call?
Exactly, yeah, it would do that, but it won't altogether cut that sound off because, of course, let's say you're walking down the high street in a busy, London Central, let's say, and you've got a call on your streamer to your processor. You don't want to miss the sound of the bus that's just pulling out. So it's from a safety point of view, we're not going to completely cut the sounds out. We need some environmental input as well.
And how does the processor handle music in that case, if you can stream music?
Yeah, exactly the same. So the music would be streamed again through your tablet, phone, what have you, in exactly the same way.
And the streamer, is that only with certain products or is it across Android and Apple products?
Yep, for both. Yeah, there's also connectivity applications, so you can download them for free, either Apple or Android, which means that you can control some settings on your streamer for your processor and make some fine adjustments if you want to. So you can do that all through the phone. You can adjust volumes and so on through the phone as well.
So if someone had tinnitus, they could perhaps use some of the tinnitus apps and stream those through as well for tinnitus relief?
I think they could actually. Anything that ultimately has got a Bluetooth application and it's trying to send signal through, it would be the same as if you were sending a piece of music that you would like to listen to in the same way. So as long as you've got that device paired with the streamer, you can stream it through.
And what is the battery life in one of these?
So typically you're looking at about anywhere from 110 to 150 hours.
That's really long.
And obviously that's going to vary depending on whether they're using streaming devices, because of course you get some drain there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's quite kind of long, if you like.
And because it's digital, there's no need for volume control?
Yes, but there's also the option if they do want to adjust volume, they can do that as well. So default, we say just let the device work for you.
Yeah.
You know, forget it. You just concentrate on trying to enjoy life. But if you wanted to, you can adjust it. There's a small volume wheel at the back.
Wonderful.
You can also adjust it through the streamer.
Okay, so that's more discreet.
Yeah. And if in doubt, if they ever turn the device up and think, oh no, I want to get it back to where it was, all they would need to do is just open the battery door
Yes.
and close it, and it kind of resets it to where it was default.
Now, what type of battery is used in this?
This one in particular is a 675p battery because this is the superpower.
It needs more power, yeah.
It needs more power. The power model, which looks and feels and weighs exactly the same as this, takes a 675.
Okay.
And then the regular device, which works down to sort of 45 dBs, that's a size 13 battery.
Okay, so good range there. Super. Well, thanks so much for
No problem at all.
your time today.
Yeah, thank you.